And you guys are live.
Okay. If I could call Public Service Committee meeting to order, can I please get approval of our previous meeting minutes?
Motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
We have two pieces coming before us this afternoon. The first piece is an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to enter into an agreement or agreements and/or legislation with the Ohio Director of Transportation for certain improvements in the city of Akron on State Route 93 and State Route 162 and declaring an emergency. Mr. Luttle?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, member of committee. If you remember 2 or 3 weeks back, we had this piece of legislation that looks the same. That was, and I was assuming that when we passed the Assessment Equalization Board upon their recommendations, that would have been good enough. But ODOT wanted this final piece passed, giving them the authorization to work in our city. So that's basically what this last piece is doing. So we've talked about this. I think it's the fifth piece we've brought before you from the start to the finish. But this is the 4 miles of resurfacing in and around wards 1, 3, 4, and 9. It kind of touches those wards on all those streets that you named. We did add a little bit on Copley Road just to connect the two pieces of legislation, but that was way back in the first piece. So with that, this gives them the authorization. They will bid, they will inspect, they will award this whole project, but for them to work in our city. So with that, I will take any questions.
Okay. Do I have any questions from committee members? Do I have any questions from council members? Seeing none. Mr. Luttle, what would be your pleasure?
You know, with next week not being a council day, can we suspend the rules so we can get this going? They would like to start this spring on this project.
Okay. Can I get a motion for suspension of rules?
I'll make the motion to suspend the rules.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Now let me find my number 4 that I seem to have lost. Oh, here we go. This is a resolution approving and confirming the appointment of Councilman Shamus Malik to the Summit Akron Solid Waste Management Authority Board reworks with Dan Dempsey as his alternate for a term ending February 28th, 2025 and declaring an emergency. Who's speaking to this piece?
Hello, Chairwoman Mosley. This is Tamika Rose in Mayor Horgan's
Ms.
office.
Rose.
How are you?
I'm well.
Good afternoon, committee members. This is fulfilling the obligation to have a council member on the Summit Akron Solid Waste Management Authority Board reworks, and we have talked with Councilman Malik, and he has accepted the appointment, and we would just like to have it formalized today, if possible.
Okay. Do I have any questions from committee members? Any questions from council? Councilman Malik?
Thank you very much. I just want to say that I appreciate the opportunity to serve on this board and have spoken with my colleague, Ms. Connor, about her experience and look forward to tackling some of the issues, including the most persistent recycling issue in the city of Akron, which is glass. I've already had some productive conversations with our service department about that. So looking forward to this. And also, Ms. Rose, want to congratulate you on your new role as well.
Thank you.
Okay. What's your preference on this, Tamika?
I would like to suspend the rules today, if possible.
Okay. Can I get a motion for suspension of rules?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the ayes have it. We have no more legislation coming before us, but Chris, are you giving us an update? Is that this week or no? Do you need another week?
Well, it's going to be 50 Wednesday, so if I can take another week, snow will be gone by the time.
That's right. Yeah, let's wait till next week. I think we're all okay with that.
If I could though, for just one quick second, with our CSO project, and I updated Councilwoman Holland, and I think we put something out. Memorial Parkway, we have that deep excavation down there by the dog park. So Memorial Parkway, starting next Monday, will be closed. You will be able to go the one way eastbound. So basically, if we use King School as a reference, you'll be able to go King School to Finley. Okay, let's use those for a reference for 2 weeks. But after the 2 weeks, the street will be closed down at the bottom of the hill because it's about a 25-foot deep excavation for that sewer project. And they need to basically shut the street down to work safely. That will take into April before the road will be opened. We will maintain traffic to the nursing home down there, Valley View, and obviously the new housing. And you will be able to get to the dog park, but you'll have to come from the west side. So if you're on North Hill, the first detour will be Main Street, all the way to Market all the way to Merriman, and then go back down Merriman. If you're past Main and you're on, let's say you're on Howard, the detour will go take Howard Street to North Street to Market, and then and back over. And then obviously, if you're all the way down on Cauga Street, the detour would be take Cauga all the way to Howard to North to Market, and then back to Merriman Road. So it's just in reverse if you're coming the other way. This is one of the last 3 projects in the CSO program. This is part of the work we did at the trailhead a few years back when we put the new parking lot in. So that will start next Monday. And I wanted to give council an update. There'll be something going out today, if it hasn't already, on a press release, just so you can let your residents know. Obviously, we've talked to APS. We've talked to those people down there. We've talked to Metro Transit Authority about the detour. So I just wanted to give you a quick update.
Okay, thank you. So when they come down North Street, you're saying they're coming from Howard down to North Street, or?
Yeah, if you're going to try to get around that Memorial and you're on, let's say Howard Street or Cauga Street, you're going to take it over to Howard and then turn right on north, right by Mustle, and then take north all the way out to Market by I Promise, and then jump on Market over to Merriman and then around that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kent, I don't know whether that would be you or Jim that would check on that microwave right there on where North Lots and Howard meet up. Sometimes that light takes a bit of time to change. And if we're going to have detours coming through there.
That's a good idea. We are looking at the timing of all those lights because we know the traffic is going to pick up and we have to move people through there.
Right. Okay. All right. Councilwoman Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much, Mr. Luddle. I really appreciate your accessibility and your responsiveness. You understood immediately that when that electronic sign went up, that it was a matter of great interest to the people of Ward 1. One of the things, a question that keeps coming up, and I feel that I've had my question answered satisfactorily, but I think it would really be great to hear it from the expert's mouth, is this issue of exactly where the dig is happening. And, social media is the way that so much communication happens these days. So there's been a lot of buzz about whether we are actually going to be digging up resurfacing that was just done. And my understanding is that, in fact, no, this is below the point where the resurfacing of Memorial Parkway begins or ends, depending on how you're looking at it. And I just wonder if, for the benefit of Ward 1 folks who are watching this and other interested Akronites, if you could just kind of speak to that.
You're absolutely correct. The resurfacing ended, prior to this. So if you're on Memorial and you're traveling east, it ended right there by the dog park. We're going to be excavating east of that. So we're basically excavating a little bit east of where Hickory comes out, right there, and that's rack 28. So we will not be tearing up the new road, and then obviously whatever is excavated will all be put back as well, better than what we found, obviously, because that needs resurfaced. That'll all be redone right there. But the new resurfacing will not be touched, no.
Thanks, Mr. Luddle. I appreciate that. And I'd like to join Councilwoman Mosley's really on point thoughts about adjusting the timing of lights on the new route makes a ton of sense, and I appreciate that foresight. So
Sure.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilman Malik?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for all the information, Mr. Little. We had talked about the APS using Essex for the Harris Jackson students. Have we been able to touch base with them about that specific usage?
Yeah, well, I know our engineer that's going to be the point person, Mike W. This has talked to Deborah Falk and has talked to APS. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Do we have any further questions or comments? Seeing none? Okay, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Our next committee of the day is the Housing and Neighborhood Assistance Committee, and that will begin at 2:15. So we have just a few minutes. Those committee members are Fusco, Holland, Mosley, McKittrick, and Connor. Again, that's the Housing and Neighborhood Assistance Committee, and that will begin at 2:15. Okay, it's 2:15 and our next committee of the day is the Housing and Neighborhood Assistance Committee. I'll give those committee members a moment to connect to video. Again, those committee members are Fusco, Holland, Mosley, McKittrick, and Connor. Looks like we do have all committee members present whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Ready.
We are live.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to entertain a motion that we accept the minutes of the previously held meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Very good. We have one item that's up for discussion today. The sponsor is here. This is the resolution asking for the creation of a neighborhood revitalization program that would provide housing incentives to recent graduates of local colleges and universities. Mr. Neal, the sponsor, is here with us today.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Well, I still sit with the same position, asking if there's any questions regarding the proposal. Had a chance to speak with Mr. Volman. I'm sure he'd like to give his perspective. Interestingly enough, I don't know if any of you read this Sunday's paper. There was an article that pointed to this discussion that communities are having across the country, as well as the other articles that have came out in the past few months. Those dealing with the increase in the death rate compared to the birth rate here. Those talking about housing being the foundation for helping to provide generational wealth, regardless of race or ethnicity. But more importantly, also the reason why this proposal was brought back in the form of a resolution, with the supporting documentation being the draft that was created some 9 years ago, was because in our capital budget, we have $400,000 scheduled for demolition. And at the time the proposal was drafted, we were spending about $10,000 to $15,000 to tear down a house. I don't know what that is now. And for those that don't know, before a house is torn down, Habitat for Humanity goes into those homes and strips them of anything of value. There happened to be a house that was on my street. And I was like, what house needed to be torn down? House wasn't being torn down because it was condemned. It was being torn down because it was $13,000 behind in taxes. It wasn't condemned. It was torn down because it was $13,000 behind in taxes. And when I went in there, the gentleman with Habitat for Humanity walked me through the house. I said, man, how many homes do you guys tear down that are in this condition? At that time, they said about 30% of the homes that they tear down do not need to be torn down. Now, any of you that have been engaged know that we've got people like Mr. Perry Clark, who worked with the group on North Hill. There's a house that I believe it's the Korean or Bhutanese community. The city had that house scheduled to be torn down. It's now a beautiful community house because they stripped it down to the studs and restored it. So, I mean, the information is outlined in the proposal. I asked members if they had concerns to please just outline using a deliberative dialogue process, the pros and the cons, so that, if this council so chooses, and whichever way the council chooses, not just council, but the community can know which direction we need to go to create a program like this. But like I said, I don't know how many of you read Sunday's paper. Front page, there was a page article on there dealing exactly with this issue. Why students are choosing this, college graduates are choosing to stay where they stay. And one of those things is some type of economic incentive. Some cities are offering like $10,000 if you come and move, since a lot of people are virtual. Some are offering to pay their postgraduate work. This would not cost our city anything. Don't know how many homes would be in there, but it would create opportunity. And if we partner, Mr. Fusco, you and I have met regularly with members from the Akron Canton Real Estate Investment Association. If we partner with people where this is their business, we could also partner with banks that have repos on their books that may want to donate these. Mr. Volman and I were talking, it's not just the land bank or the city or the health department or banks. There may also be people in the community who would want to be a part. But the easy thing to start with is where we do our regular demo. And that's the reason for this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Neal, for your comments. Thank you. Mr. Volman, do you have anything to offer?
Yeah, just a couple thoughts, and I did have a nice conversation with Councilman Neal on Friday, and I think we probably all are in agreement that, you know, if a home can be rehabbed as opposed to demolished, that's a good thing. If we can keep college graduates in Akron, that's a good thing. This program itself, I guess the first reason I started looking is having listened to last week's committee meeting. I was a bit confused about, you know, where this policy program that is not necessarily part of the resolution, but you know, something gone along with the resolution came from, and I thought I heard that it had been drafted by Abraham Westcott and the planning department. In talking through with Councilman Neal, I believe, and he can confirm, but I talked to Abraham a bit as well, that, you know, the initial draft of this came over to the planning department from the councilman, and that Abraham had made some comments to it, some suggestions to it, and sent that back. And I'm thinking that was 7, 8, 9 years ago. You know, a lot has changed since then. A lot hasn't changed since then. But you know, it was you know, the planning was part of it, but Abraham was not, you know, did not draft this policy. You know, again, with the idea, I think there's issues with this, as my opinion, with this program. One of which is that we just generally don't own homes in order to transfer them to people. It's not our business. If we're looking at, and I think part of this comes from not wanting to demolish the houses that come in front of the Housing Appeals Board, those are not owned by us. We don't, it's generally a private owner, oftentimes an absentee company that was created to own rental housing that never responds to, you know, orders or the like. You know, those are the owners of those properties. When we tear them down, they are still the owners of the property. They tend to get tax delinquent and end up in some level of foreclosure, and eventually the vacant land comes to be hopefully repurposed. But you know, I think that, and I don't know to what extent anyone's had conversations, and I can't, you know, speak for Patrick Bravo or the land bank. You know, they tend to be the entity that forecloses on a lot of these tax delinquent houses, and as maybe are the reason that they are demolished. I think that, you know, they do some demolition. I don't know to what extent the ones they demolish should be or should not be, but you know, those tend to be for more tax delinquent purposes. I think they could be a vehicle to, you know, have some sort of program where if they end up with one that isn't in too bad shape, that, you know, something could be worked out. I don't know why the city would have to be in the middle of some sort of transaction like that. I think, you know, I did not see any like pro forma on this proposal. I know Councilman Neal has said it was at no cost to the city. I mean, there might be minimal cost. I mean, but there would be some cost to the city of acquiring these properties from the land bank, even if it's the $400 like the vacant lots that we were buying during planning committee. You know, it might be more for a house. I'm not sure. But then there would be some period of time where we would have ownership of that house, would have some level of having to maintain, you know, would have the liability of ownership of that house. So I mean, there are concerns there as well. You know, with the city owning vacant, you know, houses. The other thing that that just, you know, spoke to me was, I don't know what, you know, depending on what the condition of that house is that we are looking to transfer. Maybe certainly if it's one that is before the Housing Appeals Board looking at being demolished, I I think the cost to rehab those would be probably, in most cases, you could probably find a decent, safe, sanitary house in Akron for less than it would cost to rehab. And I think they would, the student themselves would be taking out debt in order to fund the rehab of that house. And I don't know that that's, practically much better than purchasing a house that's available. But again, this was, I just, just looked at this, as a glance and talked through it with Councilman Neal a bit. And again, if there's and just in the background, we had met with Chad Stone, who had come in before and is very interested in rehabbing houses. The gentleman and the organizations that Councilman Neal mentioned, I mean, if we can get houses into the hands of people that want to rehab them and put them back on the market, I think that's a very laudable goal. But I don't see this. Practically, I think that this program would need a lot. And again, I think something like that might be more run through something like the land bank or a community. I mean, if there's a CDC or a community organization that wants to get involved, that we can put people in touch with other people and they want to have a program for recent graduates. So again, these are good goals. I don't know how to implement what, again, not that, and I think Councilman Neal will tell you, make changes, work on things to make his, to make the goal come true. But as written, I think there would be some, some complications. And I'll take a breath now and stop talking. And
thank you. That's okay. No problem. I hate interrupting people.
That's okay. You can put up a flag, 5 seconds, something like that. I'm happy to talk as long or as little as you want.
I too have some concerns. I believe that there is, I think we all would love to see something like this in some form. I just don't know if this resolution does that. I would be voting against it. I'll be perfectly honest. But I would like to open up to any committee or council members at this time that if they have any comments, and if there isn't any, I would, okay, I see a comment from Tara Mosley.
Thank you, Chairman Fusco. I know we've been kicking the can a lot on this lately, and it does not seem like the support would be there. I do support it, but I really want Councilman Neal to work on this in a legislative format. I think that if crafted on the legislative end, and speaking with all the individuals who see it as something that can move our city forward and keeping college graduates here and getting input on the legislative side, I think it would definitely be a great piece. But I do support it as a resolution because it's not law. It's just really trying to make a direction. But seems like it may not have the votes. But I would really encourage you to work on it on the legislative side. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Nancy Holland?
Is she muted?
I think so. I think Nancy's still muted. There you go.
Sorry. Little technical
No problem.
challenge there. I'd like to echo some of Councilwoman Mosley's comments and to just overall make a plug for our continued group efforts at looking for ways to engage and retain recent college graduates and to make the most of our beautiful older housing stock and to help folks find a way to use that housing stock to best advantage. And that's what I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda Mobian.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I too support us doing something. If it means putting a working task force together to look at this and to see if we can further develop it. I know what Mr. Neal's goals are, And I think it's the goal of all of us to keep as many graduates here in our city, take advantage of many of these abandoned homes and make them into livable spaces for people. I mean, I agree with all of the elements of this. And I would love for us to find a way through a work group or whatever to find a way to use this as a pilot, if nothing else, just to figure out, can we do this? And since you have a councilman who is saying, I have homes in my ward that I believe we can help find ways to rehabilitate. And we do have some dollars through ARPA and maybe through CDBG, I don't know, but there are ways in which we can set aside some funds, whatever it may cost. And it sounds like it may be a minimal cost, I don't know, but because the idea is to give it to them to rehab. But most kids, I hate to call them kids, but everybody that's younger than me is a kid to me. But most young adults, especially if you're graduating from college, you don't have any money. And this would be one way of helping you get started. And it would be an economic incentive to keep folks here in the area. So if there's a way for us to look at it that way, I think I would love for us to try that. So with that in mind, I certainly would support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda Mobian. Shamus Malik.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to echo some of the other sentiments and say that, I appreciate the explanation from Mr. Volman about the process. I think that, the city is not typically a landlord or has interests in residential homes because there is a lot of exposure and liability there. And that's not to say that we shouldn't be at all in the future, but that, to undertake something like that should be done with a lot of thought put into it. It sounds like the next best step would be kind of working with the land bank to figure out how many homes the land bank is acquiring that they're not demolishing, and seeing where we can go from there, whether there's we can take 5 of those homes and try to allocate some resources to provide those to students, like some kind of pilot program. But I don't feel that this resolution moves us forward towards doing that. So I won't be supporting it, but I'm happy to be involved in any and would like to be involved in any of the discussions moving forward about this.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Malik. We have talked about this quite a bit, and I believe all of us, I'm not going to speak for everybody on council, but I think everyone would like to see perhaps a pilot or something moving forward, and not exclude others that we'd like to keep within our city borders as well. It does seem as though that there's perhaps some best practices out there, but again, we will, how about if we, in all fairness, Mr. Neal will give you a couple minutes here, and then I'm going to ask for a vote. Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to answer some of the concerns. Everyone here says that they have an interest. We understand that. I want to let you know that, one, this has been done before. I worked with Mr. John Moore in Mustard Seed, and we redid 2 homes. At that time, the city also gave a home away for $1 that they rehab. There's been programs throughout where we have examples where organizations have done this. Also, if you can imagine the dialogue we had over a resolution, it would be unfair to ask me to get the banks, the partnering CDCs, the partnering government bodies, and investors together to put together an ordinance, which is that's a heavy lift, but something that could be done with people who have an understanding of how to do it. I shared with Mr. Volman I asked him if, his background as an attorney. He doesn't have any experience in this. Put a piece of paper in his hand, he's a master. Put a piece of paper in my hand, I'm not going to produce what he produces. Same way, you put the house in his hand, he doesn't know what to do with it. You put it in my hand or Mr. Chad Stone's hand or Mr. Perry Clark's or someone else's, they know what to do with it. I've seen people redo these homes. So again, to say that we want to do a pilot with some other things, we cannot spend $1. We cannot do an initiative without either creating first a resolution or an ordinance. And an ordinance takes more work, and it takes the heavy lift that everyone says. Again, through a resolution, we're saying to the community and to our potential partners that as a city council, this is an initiative that we want to see come forth, and we can bring partners together. I have no problem spearheading this. Some of the folks, Mr. Fusco, that you and I have worked with, like Mr. Jack Herring, the Real Estate Investment Association, as I mentioned, the National Realtors Association, the realtors who you, Mr. Fusco, and myself, and at that time, Marilyn Keith met with 8-9 years ago. These are just a few of the partners that want to be a part, not to mention Habitat for Humanity, Yandacy, all these others, folks that do this. So now the matter is, do we have the resolve as a council to run a pilot? And if so, we can't start with an ordinance. We've talked about all the things that we have to put in place, but we can start with a resolution. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Neal. At this point, I'd like to ask for a motion for an adverse report. Is there a motion for an adverse report? I'll make the motion for an adverse report.
Second.
There is a second for an adverse report. All those in favor of the adverse report signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Against the adverse report?
Nay.
Okay, very good. Can we please have a roll call, Sarah Viviano?
Yes. Fusco,
Aye.
Holland,
Aye.
Mosley,
Nay.
McKittrick,
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
The motion for an adverse report passes 4-1.
Thank you. We'll report that out this evening. With that, this concludes the Housing Committee meeting of Akron City Council. Thank you.
Our next committee of the day will be the Budget and Finance Committee, and that will begin at 3 o'clock. Those committee members are Freeman, Amobian, Malik, Baylor, and Lombardo. Again, that's the Budget and Finance Committee that will begin at 3 o'clock.